Now, have more fun, win more prizes too, with Larry Kinney on Bowling for Dollars, the show that lets you play and win at home.
Thought one, dumps it over the middle, ETN in space, ETN to the 10, Reeves, touchdown Tigers!
Burrow throws towards the end zone, Jefferson open, over the shoulder catch, he's got it, left corner of the end zone, touchdown Tigers!
You're listening to The Review on the OSG Podcasting Network.
That's right, everybody. Welcome to The Review. It's the online sports guys talking college football because, believe it or not, the college football season is not over yet.
No.
We just finished the first round of college football playoff games, aka the semifinals, and there's still a whole shit ton of bowl games left to go because bowl games. I am OSG Phil. Joining me is OSG Nelson. We are, again, the online sports guys. Before I get into the college football playoff talk, I must do the self-promotional stuff. If you're listening to us, obviously you may have found us on Spreaker or on one of the other various podcasting networks that we're a part of. Hopefully you've already downloaded the OSG Sports app on either your iPhone or Android device and are checking us out there and got an alert when you found out we had a new show.
Yep.
And then there's the social media aspect, which we would need to mention as well. You can find us at OSG Sports, both on Facebook and Twitter. You can find us on the web at our website, theonlinesportsguys.com, where we get to talk about pretty much anything that crosses our minds, sports and otherwise. And now it's time to get on with the show. John, we had a pretty entertaining round one of the college football playoff yesterday as we record this on Sunday, or also known as Saturday night. And we got to see LSU literally lay the smack down on Oklahoma. And we saw Clemson come back and beat Ohio State in a game that the Ohio State faithful will be griping about probably for the next couple of years.
Yeah.
Did you see either game?
Oh, yeah. No, we did. We camped out and watched them both. And you look at the first one with LSU and Oklahoma, and you really just see how LSU is just
Mismatch.
Far and away. Yeah, it was. And obviously, the storyline with the Ensmingers was a part of it, and the conversation that was had with Steve Jr. before the game started was that, then I'm paraphrasing, that basically that they were going to beat Oklahoma's ass, and they did. And I know that some folks were disappointed that they were going to put 70 and they only put 63 up, and so folks were disappointed in that. But you got to see why, and I think a lot of folks are going to sit there and say why the college football playoff does not need to expand to 8 teams, because if you end up with that as your 4, then if that happened to your number 4 team and you wanted to substitute, okay, who do you want to substitute? And don't think that the same thing wouldn't happen again. So
I had that conversation with a couple people online too. It's like, okay, obviously there were 3 extremely good teams this year, and somebody had to be number 4.
Right.
It was Oklahoma the 4th best team in the country. You could argue that point, but I'm not really sure that anybody else really was worthy of that title either, nor would it give an LSU any better of a fight.
Right, and that's the thing. It's like, all right, so if you want to put Georgia back in there as your number 4, what makes you think that the same thing wouldn't happen all over again? I think the only team that really was close this year to LSU was Auburn, and Auburn is nowhere close to being the number 4. So you had that as a part of the discussion. You had just how absolutely fluid and flawless the offense was in picking apart Oklahoma's defense.
Wow.
Battling his way near the goal line, it's Justin Jefferson, touchdown Tiger! Terrace Marshall has it right inside the end zone, touchdown Tiger! Touchdown Tigers! Touchdown Tigers! Touchdown Tigers! Touchdown Tigers!
Yeah, and that's that at the end of the day, it's not having a weapon to beat you. It's how many weapons do you have to beat a team. I'll add in my thoughts, having watched most all of the LSU Oklahoma game and parts of the Clemson game versus Ohio State.
Right.
The big story for me during the LSU game is the absolutely relentless, ruthless efficiency of Joe Burrow. If you had asked me after seeing Burrow play last season for LSU if he was going to ever be any version of this, I would have laughed.
Yeah.
But the kid, he is deadly accurate. He is capable of making plays on his feet. He makes the right decision almost every time in terms of where he's throwing the football. And that combination with the offense and patterns and the receivers and skill athletes that he has on that team, they're scary good on offense. And one of I laughed. The lovely bride and I were watching the game together, and we both kind of laughed a little bit because the CBS announce team pointed out a statistics stating how LSU is the number one offensive team in yardage or something like that over the course of the season. But Oklahoma was number 2, just a couple of yards behind them. And I just kind of laughed and made the comment, that would be why that's a meaningless statistic. LSU being the number 1 offensive team statistically in the country against a bunch of SEC defenses is a big deal.
Yes.
Oklahoma being number 2 against a bunch of Big 12 defenses, well, duh.
Yeah.
Nobody plays defense in the Big 12, or very little.
Yeah.
So that into itself wasn't a surprise. It was, the difference was LSU's line controlled the game. If you look, Burrow had, if not minutes, multiple seconds to throw the ball every time he dropped back.
Yeah.
Curry had plenty of time to run the ball in replace of Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who played a little bit, but wasn't
need him
in the second half, so they didn't have to play him.
Yeah.
There were plenty of holes to run through. The protection was fantastic. Jamar Chase, Jefferson, even Randy Moss's son, all of them made big plays, big catches, but they didn't have to do that much because the ball was right on target every time.
Yeah. And I think that one of the things that might be overlooked in all of this is the fact that Clyde Edwards-Helaire wasn't used all that much. So you didn't need him, and you're going to have that extra 10 days to get him healthy before the national championship game. And the question now, and I'll pose this to the floor before we get into the refereeing and the decisions that were made by review. If you were the Cincinnati Bengals, not that I would ever wish that on you.
No.
But if you were the Cincinnati Bengals,
I appreciate you avoiding the insult.
Yeah. Hey, considering the lid that you're displaying here for the show on the video side of things, if you're the Cincinnati Bengals, do you go for Joe Burrow to be the replacement for Andy Dalton, or do you go with Chase Young?
I think it would be football malpractice by the Bengals, which is a team who has committed malpractice on more than one occasion.
And malfeasance.
It would be absolutely criminal for them to not pick Burrow, who, never mind the fact that he's the best player in college football this season, bar none. The fact that he's also a homeboy for a team that is in desperate need of any good public relations that they can get. So, that's a no-brainer to me.
Okay. Thought I'd put that out there.
Yeah. As for the Ohio State-Clemson game, that game I knew was going to be a back-and-forth affair. I knew that was going to be a slobber knocker, and it was.
Yes.
You're talking about 2 extremely talented college football teams on both sides of the football. Unlike Oklahoma, both Clemson and Ohio State play defense, and they play it very, very well. You mentioned the 2 questionable calls. The targeting call.
That's what the rule is. Bottom line for me, if that's what the rule is, then that's the rule, and you have to call it in that particular case.
Yeah. There's no refereeing malpractice there by the refs making that call. That's what they're there to do. Their job, and the guy running the replay booth, that's their job. It sucks that it took out Ohio State's best defensive back, but that's what the rule's in place for. You don't have to like it, but the rule's there. And you're not going to make an exception or change it just because Ohio State's playing in the game.
Yeah.
As for the second play, the catch and run, I saw that play when it happened, and it was split-second decision. And for me, it harkens back to a debate you and I have had in the past, and that's over the use of and the relevance of instant replay in sports.
Right. Yes.
Right or wrong, the play on the field, should the play on the field probably have stood? Yes, it should have, because that was the decision that was made on the field, in my opinion. But you could make the argument that there was evidence to prove that he never had control of the ball before the ball went down on the ground. But when you have and utilize replay for almost every single thing that happens, it takes a lot of the action out of the ref's hands. And for years we survived without having instant replay. Now all of a sudden we have it and everything's in question, and all of a sudden the refs suck.
Yeah.
It disturbs me to see some of the things coming out of the Ohio State, trying to think of a polite way to put this.
Fan base?
Yeah. Making threats against the referee and screaming and yelling, SEC bias. They were SEC refs. They didn't want us to win. The refs were against us. No, referees don't pick a side. The first person who can sit there and tell me, I've seen the referees writing it down in their order saying, you must make a call at this time in this game that favors this team. The first time you ever see that and can prove that that's actually happened, then it'll be the last time you ever hear me pontificate about anything ever again. It'd be the last time I'd watch a football game. I would swear off football for the rest of my God-given life.
Wow.
If you could prove to me that referees are in a conspiracy to make sure that one team loses and the other team wins for whatever reason that team that's been spit upon seems to think is the reason, be it they're SEC refs and they hate us, or ESPN doesn't want us playing in the game. ESPN doesn't give a shit whether you're playing in the game or not. They're going to get ratings and they're getting paid. They're getting their TV money whether you show up, Clemson shows up, LSU shows up, or Oklahoma shows up. That doesn't impact anything. So stop with the TV conspiracy theories. Well, they picked the teams they wanted in it because it's the best TV matchup. If they wanted the best TV matchup, yeah, it would have been LSU and Ohio State. So that argument's, never mind the stupidity of it, it's irrelevant. I'll get off my horse now.
Nothing wrong with that. No, that's, that's what we saw from a lot of Ohio State folks, and just analyzing the two plays. If you've got a problem with targeting the way that it's currently structured, then fix the rule. Don't go after the way that that instant replay went after the actual rule in and of itself, the way it's currently constructed. We actually have this discussion pretty much simultaneously over on the SDH network side about how video assistant refereeing right now is being vilified for how people are being looked at for being millimeters offside when it comes to goals being scored or goals being pulled off the board. But the bottom line is, what does the rule say? The rule says one thing or another. If the rule has any piece of your person, ahead of the last defender, you're offside. And if they bring out the X, Y, and Z axes and they bring out the Hawkeye system and they sit there and they draw the lines and sit there and go, okay, here's the line, here's offside, then you're offside. Bottom line is, that's the rule. You cannot complain at how it's being reviewed in a video sense, regardless of sport, because that's what the current rule of engagement is. If you have a problem...
Then why even bother having a referee?
Right. And that's the thing, is that if you have a problem with video review, the problem is not with video review and how things are being reviewed. Your problem is with the rule or the law of the game. Adjust that so that way you won't have these situations like Siri, what's a catch? Siri, what's a football move? Siri, all these kinds of things. Fix the rule and fix the laws of the game so you're not having these discussions, and you won't be bitching all the time about something that you think is a fix, when in reality, the only fix needs to be with the rule and not with video assistant referee.
Yeah, it kills me to see that they're crying over that and calling that the reason that they lost the game. At the end of the day, they stopped Clemson from scoring at the end. We're not having this conversation.
And if you also take your 3 field goal opportunities and score touchdowns with them instead of kick field goals, then it's not an issue.
Exactly. And you can sit there, football fans in particular are notorious at this. You can sit there and say this play or this call or this decision midway through the game was the reason we won or lost the game. No, actually, it's not. If you've got time left on the clock and something happened after that play, you gave up a score or you scored or anything of that sort, you have control over that. At the end of the day, if you're up by 3 points and all of a sudden you lose by 3 points because of a call that happened or a decision that you think messed it up in the second quarter, you had 2 quarters to fix that.
Yeah.
If you can't work back from that, you didn't deserve to win the game anyway.
You're introducing logic into the situation. That's your problem.
I know, but that being said, it leaves us with one heck of a championship game here on January 13th. LSU versus Clemson in New Orleans.
Home game. And I can guarantee you that the Mercedes-Benz Superdome will not run out of beer.
No. Nor will anything on the French Quarter or anything within probably a 10-mile radius of the French Quarter, which includes the stadium, by the way, if you've never been down there. That is going to be complete, utter chaos and fun. I'm really looking forward to seeing this game because you could make a good argument that these are the 2 best teams in college football, without a doubt.
Yeah, and we'll have an entire 2-week period to sit there and hype the hell out of it across the network.
Oh, yeah. Just preliminarily, you're talking about a Clemson team balanced on both sides of the ball. Lots of weapons, both on the outside and at running back for quarterback Trevor Lawrence, who, by the way, played a tremendous game.
He did, especially. I think getting hit just got him mad.
Lawrence took a peek downfield, had a lot of room, and breaks the tackle, and is still running. Lawrence in a foot race. Will they catch him? Touchdown, Tigers!
Hey, whatever they did, it worked.
Yeah.
He had gotten some heat for not performing in the clutch this past season for Clemson. And, man, when the game was on the line, he really, really, really turned it up. And if you ever wanted to know why he's hyped up as arguably being the next big thing in terms of college football quarterback, you got to see why this week.
I'm still trying to figure out how he finished 7th in the Heisman voting and was not 5th.
Because he plays in the ACC and it's a popularity contest, but that's a whole other conversation. Well, why don't we wrap things up here on the first block of the show, because we have a 2-block show.
Yes.
Coming back after the break, John and I will talk about bowl games, because Lord knows there are plenty of them between now and the next time you see us. So stay tuned. Coming back in a little over 1 minute, it's Bowl Game Palooza here on The Review on the OSG Sports Podcasting Network.
The online sports guys would love to hear from you. Go to our Twitter page at OSG Sports for a comment, rant, or just whatever's on your mind about college football.
Soccer Down Here is sponsored by Apolinski & Associates, LLC, personal injury lawyers with over 30 years of experience. Call Steve Apolinski at 518-350-4231 or email him at steve@aa-legal.com if you need help with a wrongful death or serious injury matter. Steve Apolinski is rated one of the top 100 trial attorneys in Georgia, recognized as Legal Elite by Georgia Trend magazine for being one of the most effective lawyers in Georgia.
If you want to scale a mountain, buy boots. If you want to turn your crush into something more, say hi. At Country Financial, we know protecting the things you love and preparing for tomorrow start with simple steps. So we help you take small steps today with insurance and financial services that can have a big impact on your family's future.
For all your home, auto, and life insurance needs, call Jason Wright at 678-568-6871.
Russians don't take a dump, son, without a plan.
Pain heals. Chicks dig scars. Glory lasts forever. Right on. Shotgun. DC right. Flip 90. Dig. On the center. On the center. Ready?
Thanks for sticking around, everybody. As you know, you are listening to the review on the OSG Sports Podcasting Network. I'm OSG Phil. He is OSG John, and we are talking the week in college football. First half of the show, we talked about the two big games, the college football semifinals, if you will.
If you will.
And a brief mention of the two teams that won, how they won, and the very first of our probably many previews of what's going to happen in the championship game coming up in a couple of weeks.
Agreed.
Second block, I want to talk a little bit more about the other games, the other bowl games. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 more bowl games to go.
Rapid fire, brother. Here we go.
All in the span of the next 8 days.
Hit me.
Hit me, baby. Hit me.
Mm-hmm.
Coming up on Monday, probably the day you are listening to this, on December 30th, the Surf Pro First Responder Bowl featuring Western Kentucky and Western Michigan at Gerald J. Ford Stadium in Dallas, Texas.
Yep, and I think Vegas had this one basically as Western Kentucky as a 3, which basically means they think it's a push. I think that Western Kentucky, probably the play here is the under because of conditions. And New Year's Day, they're having the Winter Classic at the Cotton Bowl between the Dallas Stars and the Nashville Predators, and they're saying that weather's going to be rainy and in the 50s. So if it rains in the forecast for me anywhere close, take the under. But I'll go with Western Kentucky here.
Yeah, pick a directional state school for 1,000, please. Neither of these teams too particularly interesting. Clay Helton's younger brother, the coach at Western Kentucky, actually had a pretty good year. We'll go with Western Kentucky just because I don't really know anything much about either of these programs.
All right.
In the 4 o'clock game on Monday, on December 30th, the Franklin American Mortgage Music City Bowl featuring Mississippi State and Louisville.
I got to go with Louisville here, considering what Scott Satterfield has been able to do and turning that program around very, very quickly. The number 3 to 3.5 and the total 62. I don't know if they get to 62, but I've got to go with Louisville.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Little turmoil for Mississippi State. Their quarterback got into a bit of a brawl and is in trouble. Joe Moorhead's had some trouble all year
with a teammate at practice.
Yeah, that's never a good sign. I like Louisville in this game as well. I don't see it being a high-scoring game, but then again, you never know. Coming up on Fox that same day at the same time, a game that somebody, I'm guessing, must be excited for, and that's California versus Illinois at Levi's Stadium in Santa Clara, California, in front of a projected crowd of 1,000.
I was going to just say 12, period. 12 people.
Because each team probably brought 500 or so people with them from their respective campuses.
Yeah. I've got to go with Cal here. I know that the number's pretty tight just because of what Lovie Smith has been able to do. I mean, they were left for dead in the Big Ten, and then they turned it around. Illinois is listed initially as a 4-point dog. That's moved up to 6 or 6.5. I got to go with Cal here. I don't know if Illinois has got enough to cover. The total at 43.5 may not get to that. So I think the under might be the play, and I think that Cal gets the win.
All right, and then I'm going to go with Illinois in this one just because I like the fact that the Fighting Illini have had a good second half of the season. They carry over their momentum and get a win in probably the quietest game of the season because nobody's going to actually be there. And the last game on December 30th, the Capital One Orange Bowl featuring Florida versus Virginia. Probably the best game of the day.
Yeah. But, I mean, right now the line started at Florida 13.5, and it's gone up to 15. I don't know. I mean, considering what happened to Virginia in the ACC championship, that's what I'm looking at. As much as it pains me, I think that the team that is from Gainesville probably puts up a big number. I don't know if Virginia's got anything in them and if they're going to be motivated to play. Total, I think, was in the mid-50s. So, yeah, this one might be the ugliest game of the day for me in the sense of margin of score, not just how it looks.
Yeah, Virginia does have arguably the best offensive football player on the field for this game in Bryce Perkins, their star running back. But I don't think he's going to be anywhere near enough against a pretty stout Florida defense. I like the Gators to win this game, a game that theoretically, based on brand name, should be pretty good. I'm not sure it will be. Take Florida, take the over.
Yeah.
Coming up on Tuesday, on New Year's Eve, December 31st, the first game of the day, the noon kickoff, the last version of the Belk Bowl featuring Virginia Tech and Kentucky in Charlotte, North Carolina.
Virginia Tech started out at 2.5. Really hasn't gone a whole lot. The total really hasn't budged either. Is at 46.5. Bud Foster's last game as a defensive coordinator. Kentucky. This is the challenge for Virginia Tech. Kentucky's basically going to sit there and say, look, we don't pass the ball. We're going to run it and try to stop the run. So that's why I think really the play is the under here. I don't think it gets to 46.5. It's another one of those 21-17, 21-20 games. So I guess that means by default, I think the under, and Kentucky covers.
Yeah, I like Kentucky too. I really like the job Lynn Bowden's done for them. Not going to throw the ball a whole heck of a lot, but when you've got the skills and athleticism that he does, you don't necessarily have to. I like Kentucky in another low-scoring game. The 2 p.m. game, the Tony the Tiger Sun Bowl.
Skip it.
Yeah, well, any game that's named after a breakfast cereal cartoon figures to be a cartoon-like game. Your alma mater against the Fighting Herm Edwardses.
Yeah.
A traditional New Year's Eve game, 2 p.m. kickoff. Has Mike Norvell been there long enough to actually make an impact on this team? The Seminoles did play a little bit better toward the end of the year.
Yeah, because Odell Higgins was coaching. It's 4 and the total's in the mid-50s. I just think that Jaden Daniels, the quarterback for Arizona State, he's going to have a big day. It's going to be a big test for Florida State's defense. I'd go with the over. I'd go with Arizona State for the parlay.
Yeah, I like Arizona State on this one too. 3:45 p.m. from the Liberty Bowl in Memphis, Tennessee. Navy versus Kansas State in the AutoZone Liberty Bowl.
It's going to be fun, isn't it? Navy started out, and get this. Started out with Navy as a 2-point dog. The line has flipped 5 points. Navy at some places is a 3-point favorite now, and the total 52.5. If you apply the same premise that we did for Washington State and Air Force in the Cheez-It, that sounds about right. I don't know if they get to 52 because if Navy has the kind of drives that Air Force did, I don't know if Kansas State and Chris Kleeman are going to have the same kind of proficiency scoring in return. I'd go with Navy and the under here.
I like K-State. I like what Chris has done with the Wildcats this season. They've been competitive in pretty much all their games. And seeing the offense that Navy runs is not going to be a complete shock to him, as he's seen it quite frequently in football championship subdivision. We're coming to Kansas State. Your next game, 4:30 p.m. on the CBS Sports Network, the Nova Homes Loans Arizona Bowl featuring Wyoming versus Georgia State in beautiful Tucson, Arizona. And I want to add a little caveat, a little nugget here from good friend of the OSG, Mr. Sam Crenshaw himself, who covers Georgia State football, who mentioned that he and several other people around the program had to come chip in and help the team unload their baggage out of their airplane to get it into their vehicles to take to the hotel because they didn't have enough people at the airport in Tucson.
Wow. I'll try to catch up with Sam and get single coverage on the Arizona Bowl before the game kicks off. We'll try to catch up with Sam and get the vibe for everything. Try to give him some helpful hints about how to spend New Year's Eve after the game, by the way. But line is Wyoming at
And how to pack
7.
luggage.
Yeah. While Wyoming is 7 in the total, mid-50s here. I'd be safer with the total and go over. I think that Georgia State, with what Coach Elliott has been doing, has done tremendous things in getting them bowl eligible, period. It was a match race for a little bit to try to figure out if they were going to go to Orlando and be in the Cure again, or if they were going to go to Tucson. I like Georgia State here, and I also like the over. I think that this game is going to be really exciting. It's going to be one of the underrated games that'll be a little chaotic. I think they'll go north of 54.5.
Okay, I have to say sorry to Sammy, but I'm going to take Wyoming in this one. Craig Bowl, a good coach. He'll have the Cowboys ready for this game. Georgia State, it's a tough trip for them coming cross country to play. I'm curious to see how many of their fans actually made the trip. Yeah. I like Wyoming in this one. Not big, but enough. The night game is Utah versus Texas in the San Antonio Alamo Dome at the Valero Alamo Bowl.
Yep.
Two teams that kind of disappointed down the stretch.
Yeah. By the way, the line, the number for Georgia State, the total's at 49, not 54. This one's the one that's at 54. Started out as Utah at 6.5 and 55. Is Utah going to be motivated enough to get the Duke? I think they are. I don't know if they're going to be able to get it to 6.5. I think that 54 might be a decent one there. So let's go with Texas to cover, Utah to win, and the over.
Oh, interesting. I'm going to take the Utes straight up because every time I've picked Texas to win a game this season, they have let me and a whole lot of other people down. And New Year's Day, the kickoff, 1 p.m., Camping World Stadium in Orlando, Florida, the Verbal Citrus Bowl featuring Michigan versus Alabama.
Yeah, started out at 7 for Alabama, and the total 56. It's moved up to 58 in most places. I just don't think Michigan's really that good. I honestly don't. I think that Alabama takes care of this one fairly comfortably. I don't know if they get to 58.
Yeah, I like Alabama in the over in this one. I think they'll put up a lot of points. It's just a question of whether how much Michigan's going to score. Alabama's defense hasn't been particularly solid this season, so the thought of Michigan at least putting a few points on the board would not shock me. Also kicking off at 1 p.m., just 90 minutes down the road at Raymond James Stadium in Tampa, Florida, it's the Outback Bowl featuring Minnesota versus Auburn.
Auburn started out as 8. It's down to 7. The total 51. The total's actually gone up to 53 or 53.5. I think that it's all going to be dependent on the run game for Auburn. And are they going to be able to – I think that Auburn physically should be able to take care of Minnesota on offense. I know that a lot of folks are going to be looking at a receiver like a Rashad Bateman and what he's able to do at Minnesota. I just don't know if Minnesota has faced a defense like they're going to with Kevin Steele as a defensive coordinator, going up against guys like Big Cat Bryant, Derek Brown, Marlon Davidson, the linebacking core. I think that really the only place that Minnesota might be able to make some hay is in the passing game, but that's on deep routes. The front seven, I don't think has been anything that they've faced all season long, except perhaps in their losses. So I think it might be a long day offensively for Minnesota. I think that Auburn covers. I don't know if they get to the total.
Yeah, I think this could be a pretty close game. And I think you're right. The difference in the game between these two teams who, believe it or not, I think might be somewhat similar is the Auburn defensive front. And I think that's enough to cause some havoc with Minnesota's offense. I like Auburn for the win. Look for them to put up a good amount of points. Then there's the granddaddy of them all at 5 o'clock, the Rose Bowl in Pasadena, featuring Oregon versus Wisconsin in a game of Pac-12 and Big 12 runner-ups.
Wisconsin 3, the line hasn't moved. The total started at 49.5. It's gone up to 51, 51.5. And I think that how you have to look at this one, honestly, is do you think that Oregon is going to have enough possessions with Wisconsin wanting to run the football as much as they do. Wisconsin's going to want to mash the ball, and I think that if they can get time and tempo, the Oregon offense isn't going to get the reps that they're going to want on the field. So that for me is the larger question. Because of that, Wisconsin's a 3-point favorite. I could see that happening. I don't know if it gets to that. 50 for me is one of those bowl numbers that you're really teasing folks with. And I think I've got to go north of the 50 just because of Oregon. So basically, if you're looking at something 28-24-ish, you've got the total. So I think that Wisconsin gets it and the over.
Okay, I like Oregon in this game. I still think they're a good team. I think they've got problems getting focused. I think they're ready for this game. Mario Cristobal have his guys ready to play a physical but typically slow Wisconsin team. Take the Ducks. In the last game of the day, the Sugar Bowl featuring Georgia versus Baylor in New Orleans. I'll talk this one because I don't know the line and the spread, but I do know Georgia and Baylor are teams that are actually somewhat similar this season. A lot of defense, some offense in spurts. Don't look for this to be a particularly high-scoring game either. I think it's going to be the total will be somewhere in the 40s. I like Georgia just because of the depth, and that's even with the amount of guys who are not playing in this game, which his numbers are approaching somewhere in the 20s.
Yeah.
Look for the Bulldogs to win in a low-scoring game.
That, to me, the motivation for Georgia is the thing here, because they remind me of 2009 Alabama. So, okay, is this when Alabama faced Utah and they basically were like showing up in the Sugar Bowl, and then Brian Johnson has the
Georgia
the game
did that exact thing last year versus Texas.
So here's your spread. Initially, it started Georgia's 8.5. It's been cut in half basically in some places. 4.5 to 5.5 is the number for Georgia. The total hasn't budged. It started at 42.5, down to 41.5. So you're looking 24-17-ish, somewhere in there. 24-20 would get you north of the total. I think that it goes north of the total. I think that Georgia wins by a touchdown.
2 more games to go. Actually,
4
to go. Yeah, 4. January 2nd, that's a Thursday. The Ticket Smarter Birmingham Bowl featuring 2 teams that don't really match up real well, at least in my opinion. Boston College and Cincinnati at Legion Field in Birmingham, Alabama.
Cincinnati started out 6.5 and the total 54.5. The line's actually moved up to 7 and 7.5 in places. Total 55.5. I just think it's going to be a long day for BC. I think Cincinnati takes this one pretty comfortably.
Yeah, I'm not even going to get into this one very much. Cincinnati wins. They don't break too much of a sweat, an easy one. And see. And the late game on Thursday, the Tax Slayer Gator Bowl featuring Indiana and Tennessee, and what actually to me is an intriguing matchup down at TIAA Jacksonville, Florida.
Yeah, it is. And you look at Tennessee, the line started Tennessee as a 1-point favorite. The line at 49, the total at 49. It's gone up to 2.5 for Tennessee, and the total commensurately has gone up to 52.5 or so. Honestly, I like Indiana in this one. I really do. I don't know if it gets to the total. I think it's a more defensive game than folks are going to want. I think that the quarterback play is too erratic for Tennessee. All I have to say is 2 words: Jarrett Garantano. And that's the poster child for their whole season. I've got to go with Indiana here, winning outright, and let's go under.
Yeah, I like Tennessee in the over here. The Vols have played pretty good football here in the second half of the season. They've gotten progressively better each week. I think their depth is a little bit too much for the Indiana Hoosiers. Friday's game, January 3rd, the famous Idaho Potato Bowl at Albertson Stadium in Boise, Idaho, featuring Ohio versus Nevada.
Ohio U, War-Solich started out -6.5, the total 56.5. Ohio's budged up to a 7.5-point favorite, and total 58.5. I don't know if it gets that high. That's a pretty high number, but I do think that War-Solich is going to be in a lot of control over this one over Nevada. I've got to go with Ohio U, but take the under.
Congratulations, you've won half your game. Your reward, a trip to Boise on January 3rd.
Yeah.
I have no real interest in this. Ohio wins just because I got to pick somebody.
There you go.
I couldn't tell you why, but yeah, take Ohio. In the last game we'll talk about this week on Saturday, January 4th, the Lockheed Martin Armed Forces Bowl in Fort Worth, Texas, featuring Southern Miss and Tulane.
Tulane started out a 7-point favorite. Line hasn't budged a whole lot. Some places it can get up to 7.5. The total started 57.5. The line's actually gone down a point over a point and a half. You can see it at 56 in some spots. I think Southern Miss covers. I think that Tulane wins. I think it's a good win for Willie Fritz in a bowl game, and I think that it shows what he's able to do with the Green Wave over the last couple of years. I think that this is just one of those. I think it's a great game. It's a shame that it's not being played like in Memphis or something like that, where you can have New Orleans folks coming, going up, and you have folks from Hattiesburg going up as well. But I think it'll be a pretty decent crowd at on the campus of TCU at Amon G. Carter. But I've got to go with the under here and Tulane winning. I think Southern Miss covers the 7.
Okay, and then next week's show, we'll talk about the one remaining game, the one last bowl game, this game to wrap up the bowl season without including the championship game on January 13th.
Like I said, we have to promote that one. We got to keep pimping that one as much as we can. Keep that one down the line. Started at 3. LSU's now a 5.5-point favorite.
Well, John, you got anything you want to hit on and talk about here before we wrap things up here on the show?
It's been an interesting bowl season so far. And once again, I think the larger thought that we have about all of this is that there are some bowl games that you don't necessarily think are worth the paper that they're printed on and turn into tremendous games. All you have to do is look at something like the SoFi Hawaii Bowl. That was a home game for the Warriors. There's always going to be intriguing matchups. And then in the larger games like we've seen, there's always going to be thoughts to discuss. And so, this go round, it's about review and not a surprise. All the networks here on the OSG Sports Network, all of our different channels have that kind of symmetry where we're talking about referees and review. So change the rule if you got a problem. That's the biggest takeaway.
Okay. All that being said, we don't really have a whole heck of a lot else to talk about here on The Review, which is, of course, the OSG Sports College Football Wrap-Up Show.
Yep.
Next time we come on the air will be 2020. So wish everybody a Happy New Year now, John, before we say goodbye.
Happy New Year. Tip of the hat to all of you who are watching on the video side. Thanks for being great listeners for all of our content, regardless of channel all across the network. Couldn't have done it without you with all the growth and all the programming that we have. We've got promise of great programming coming up in 2020, and we're going to continue to build, and we can't thank you enough for being a part of it.
What he said. He is OSG Nelson. I am OSG Phil. We are the Online Sports Guys, and you have been listening to The Review on the OSG Sports Podcasting Network. Happy New Year, everybody. Bye.